Ladies and gentlemen, your purpose is not waiting for the perfect moment. It's waiting for a focused heart. When you shift your eyes from fear to faith, from comparison to calling, from doubt to destiny, you begin to walk in the power and potential God placed within you long before the world tried to define you. You may not have all the answers. You may still feel the weight of uncertainty. But when you trust, when you believe, when you focus, not on what you see, but on what God has spoken, everything begins to change. Your value is not up for debate. Your potential is not limited by your past, and your destiny is not determined by what you've lost, but by the one who still leads you forward. So I encourage you, shift your focus. Embrace your journey and walk boldly in your purpose, knowing you were created for such a time as this. You can't walk in your purpose until you shift your focus. That's not just a powerful statement, it's a truth many overlook while waiting for their lives to change. The reason some people feel stuck, confused, or lost isn't because they don't have a purpose, but because their focus is fixed on the wrong things. You see, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And if your focus is rooted in fear, pain, or distraction, then your steps toward purpose will always feel uncertain, delayed, or even blocked. Some people are trying to walk forward while constantly looking backward. They're focused on the mistakes they made, the time they wasted, the people who walked away. They can't see the open doors ahead because they're too busy staring at the ones that closed. But purpose isn't found in regret. It's found in faith, faith to believe that what's ahead is greater than what's behind. As long as your mind is anchored in the past, your purpose will remain out of reach. Others are focused on the opinions of people. They're living to prove something, to be accepted, to be validated by voices that were never meant to define them. And the tragedy is, when you seek the approval of others, you often forfeit the plan of God. You weren't made to live according to someone else's expectations. You were made to live according to God's vision for your life. But if your focus is horizontal on people, rather than vertical on God, you'll always feel like you're chasing something but never arriving. There are also those who focus on what they don't have. They keep waiting for the perfect conditions, more money, more time, more support, better circumstances. But the truth is, purpose doesn't wait for perfection. It responds to obedience. If you keep focusing on what's missing, you'll miss what's already in your hands. Sometimes God won't give you more until you shift your focus and become faithful with what you already have. And let's talk about fear. Fear will always try to take the front seat in your mind. It whispers lies that sound like truth. You're not ready. You're not good enough. You'll fail if you try. And when your focus is locked on fear, you begin to doubt not just your purpose, but the one who gave it to you. But fear is a liar, and it only has power when you give it your attention. When you shift your focus to faith, even in the middle of uncertainty, you allow God's strength to carry you where fear told you you'd never go. It's not about ignoring reality or pretending life is easy. It's about choosing to shift your focus from what you see to what God says, from what feels impossible to what God promises is possible. You can't walk in your purpose by accident. It's intentional. And it begins the moment you stop letting distractions, doubts, and disappointments lead your vision. Your purpose is already within you. It's not something you have to find outside of yourself. It's something God placed deep in your spirit. But that purpose can only come alive when your focus aligns with His truth, when you look up instead of around, when you focus not on what you lost, but on what you're becoming, when you stop focusing on why it won't work and start focusing on who called you. So if you feel distant from your purpose, it's not because it's far away. It may simply be that your focus has been on the wrong thing, because the truth is, you can't walk in your purpose until you shift your focus. Focusing on fear, comparison, or doubt blocks your divine calling. These three things might seem like normal parts of life, but when they dominate your thoughts, they become spiritual blindfolds that keep you from seeing the truth of who you are and what you're called to do. Fear, comparison, and doubt aren't just feelings. They are forces that distract, delay, and sometimes completely derail people from walking in the purpose God placed inside of them. Fear is a paralyzer. It doesn't always come in the form of terror or panic. Sometimes it shows up quietly as hesitation, as the voice in your head that says, "What if I fail?" or "What if they laugh at me?" Fear magnifies everything that could go wrong and minimizes the power of God working in you. It causes you to shrink back when you're supposed to step forward. The problem is not that fear exists. Everyone feels afraid at some point. But when your focus stays on fear, you start to believe its lies. You begin to question the vision you once felt sure about. And if you're not careful, fear can convince you to settle for a life that's smaller than the one God intended for you. Then there's comparison, one of the most dangerous habits of the mind. In a world where people are constantly sharing their highlight reels, it's easy to look at someone else's success, their influence, their gifts, and start feeling like you're behind. Comparison doesn't just rob you of joy, it clouds your view of your own purpose. You can't run your race if you're busy looking at someone else's lane. And the tragic part is that comparison can lead you to mimic someone else's calling, thinking it's what you're supposed to do. But God doesn't bless imitation, He blesses authenticity. What He gave to them was designed for them. What He gave to you, no one else can fulfill. But you'll never discover that if your eyes are constantly focused on others instead of looking within and listening to God's voice. And then there's doubt. Doubt creeps in subtly, especially after you've experienced disappointment, failure, or delay. It starts small, like a question, "Did God really say that?" Or "Am I sure this is for me?" But it grows fast when left unchecked. Doubt attacks your identity, your decisions, and your direction. It makes you feel like maybe you're not qualified, maybe you misheard, maybe someone else would do it better. And once doubt takes root, it starts to choke the confidence and boldness that faith brings. It convinces you to sit when you should be moving. It tells you to stay silent when you're called to speak. It makes you think you need more confirmation, more signs, more approval, when really what you need is trust. All three, fear, comparison, and doubt, work together to keep you out of alignment with your calling. They don't just make you feel stuck, they actually interfere with your spiritual clarity, and without clarity, you won't move forward. You'll stay in cycles of hesitation, questioning, and regret. The calling on your life doesn't disappear, but your focus can cause you to miss the opportunities that bring it to life. These distractions are not just emotional, they are spiritual warfare. They are tools the enemy uses to keep powerful, purposeful people from becoming who they were born to be. When your mind is full of fear, you can't focus on faith. When you're consumed with comparison, you lose sight of your own path. When you dwell on doubt, you begin to question the very things God confirmed in your heart, and that's how callings get buried, not because they weren't real, but because the focus never shifted. The calling is still there. But as long as fear, comparison, or doubt dominate your thoughts, the door to your destiny stays shut, not locked, but unopened. Purpose begins when you trust God, even without understanding. That may sound simple, but it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. We live in a world that teaches us to rely on what we see, what we know, what we can explain. But purpose doesn't always come with explanations. It doesn't always make sense in the beginning. Often, the greatest things God calls you to will stretch your faith beyond what's comfortable, logical, or even reasonable. And that's exactly where trust begins, when understanding ends. There are moments in life when everything feels uncertain. Plans fall apart, opportunities disappear, people walk away, And in those moments, the natural instinct is to ask, why? Why did this happen? Why didn't things go the way I hoped? Why now? But purpose doesn't always answer why. Sometimes, God isn't asking you to figure it out. He's asking you to follow Him. Trust is the bridge between where you are and where you're called to be. And that bridge often has no signs, no clear map, and no guarantees. Just the assurance that He's with you. Trusting God doesn't mean you'll always feel confident. It means choosing to believe He's still good even when life isn't. It's walking into the unknown, not because you have all the answers, but because you believe the one who holds the answers has already gone before you. Faith is not about clarity, it's about obedience, and purpose doesn't begin with full understanding. It begins with a heart that says, God, I don't get it, but I'll go. Think about the people in Scripture who walked in purpose. Most of them had no idea how things would turn out. Abraham was told to leave everything familiar without knowing where he was going. Moses stood in front of Pharaoh with nothing but a promise and a staff. Mary said yes to carrying a child she didn't ask for in circumstances she didn't choose. They didn't have perfect understanding. What they had was trust, and that trust made room for purpose to unfold. Sometimes we delay our calling because we're waiting to understand everything before we move. We say, once I see the full picture, I'll say yes. Once I know the plan, I'll take the step. But purpose rarely reveals itself all at once. It's not a roadmap, it's a relationship. God often shows you the next step, not the whole journey, and that's intentional, because He's not just leading you into purpose, He's teaching you to trust Him along the way. You might feel unqualified, you might feel confused, but purpose doesn't require perfection. It just requires surrender. When you let go of the need to control and choose to lean on His wisdom, you make space for something greater than your own plan. God doesn't need you to have it all figured out. He just needs your yes, your willingness, your faith. Trust means planting seeds even when you don't see the harvest. It means building when you don't know if the rain will come. It means showing up when no one's clapping, giving when you feel empty, and believing when everything in you wants to quit. That's where purpose lies, in the tension between uncertainty and faith. It grows in the soil of surrender. So many people miss their purpose not because they weren't gifted, but because they were waiting for guarantees. But purpose doesn't come with guarantees. It comes with God, and He is enough. When you choose to trust Him, especially when you don't understand, you step into a story that's far bigger than your doubts, fears, or limitations. That step, that trust, is the beginning of walking in your true purpose. God uses pain as a pathway to purpose. That's not always easy to hear, especially when you're in the middle of the pain. When your heart is broken, your prayers feel unanswered, and your life feels like it's falling apart, the last thing you want to believe is that something good could come out of it. But time and time again, God takes the very things that were meant to destroy us and uses them to shape us, strengthen us, and lead us into the purpose He's prepared for us. Pain has a way of waking us up. It strips away the illusion of control. It reveals what's really inside us. It forces us to confront who we are and what we believe, and most importantly, it pushes us to our knees. Some of the most powerful encounters with God happen not on the mountaintops, but in the valleys. When everything is going right, we often forget to listen. But in pain, we learn how to hear God in a deeper way, not just with our ears, but with our spirit. God never wastes pain. He doesn't cause all the pain in our lives, but He does promise to redeem it. What the enemy meant for harm, God can turn into a testimony. That heartbreak you thought would end, you can actually become the fuel that launches you into compassion, purpose, and passion. That season of loss, betrayal, or failure can break your pride, deepen your faith, and prepare your heart for something you couldn't have carried before. Pain doesn't disqualify you, it prepares you, it teaches endurance. It builds empathy, it softens your heart while strengthening your resolve. The scars you carry are not signs of defeat. They're proof that you survived, and those scars can become signs of hope for someone else walking through the fire. Sometimes, the very thing you thought disqualified you from your purpose becomes the reason someone else finds theirs. That's the beauty of how God works. He brings purpose from ashes. He brings life from brokenness. Purpose often doesn't feel like purpose when you're in the middle of the process. It feels like confusion. It feels like pain. It feels like silence. But looking back, you'll see that every tear watered something inside you. Every season of waiting built something eternal. Every moment of hurt carved out more space in your heart for compassion, wisdom, and grace. Those who have suffered deeply often love deeply. Those who have walked through fire often carry a light that helps others find their way. When you surrender your pain to God, it becomes more than just suffering. It becomes sacred ground. That's where your faith becomes real. That's where your purpose begins to grow, not from a place of comfort, but from a place of transformation. Pain breaks things open, but God fills what is broken with new strength, new vision, and new purpose. The version of you that comes out on the other side is wiser, humbler, and more equipped to serve others with authenticity. So no, pain is not pleasant, it's not easy, but it is powerful in the hands of God. He doesn't remove every struggle, but He does promise to walk with you through it. And when you allow Him to use your pain, you step into something deeper than just healing. You step into purpose. A purpose that doesn't just change your life, but touches the lives of others. A purpose that reminds the world that pain is not the end of the story. It's often where the story really begins. Shifting focus reveals your true value, potential, and destiny. The direction of your focus shapes the direction of your life. When your attention is locked on what's wrong, what's missing, or what's broken, you can't clearly see the truth of who you are. But the moment you begin to shift your focus from the outside world to the inner work God is doing in you, something powerful begins to unfold. You start to recognize that your worth isn't defined by your circumstances, your failures, or other people's opinions. Your value is rooted in who you are and who created you. There are so many things in life that try to steal your focus: distractions, disappointments, deadlines, and doubts. And while those things may feel urgent, they're not always important. They may demand your attention, but they don't define your direction. When your eyes are constantly fixed on the noise around you, it's easy to forget the quiet truth within you, that you are made for more, that you carry something special, that your life is not random. But you'll never fully grasp that truth until you shift your focus. Many people live stuck in cycles of insecurity, not because they lack potential, but because their focus is fixed on comparison. They measure themselves against someone else's success, beauty, or influence, and in doing so, they lose sight of what makes them unique. But the moment you stop comparing and start focusing inward, you begin to see that you were created on purpose with purpose. You begin to uncover gifts you didn't even know you had because your focus was too clouded to see them before. Shifting your focus also changes how you respond to challenges. Instead of viewing obstacles as signs that you're not good enough, you begin to see them as opportunities to grow. You start to recognize that pressure doesn't mean you're in the wrong place. It might just mean you're being refined for the right one. When your focus is on growth, even your pain becomes a teacher. Your mindset shifts from "why is this happening to me?" to "what is this preparing me for?" That change in focus transforms frustration into fuel and discouragement into development. When your focus is grounded in truth, God's truth, you begin to walk differently. You stop settling for less because you understand your value. You stop shrinking back because you understand your potential. You stop guessing yourself because you understand your identity. That clarity begins to shape your choices, your relationships, and your future. You make decisions based not on fear, but on faith, not on what's popular, but on what's purposeful. There's something powerful about looking in the mirror and seeing yourself through the lens of faith instead of failure. That happens when you stop focusing on your flaws and start focusing on your foundation. You were created in the image of a God who makes no mistakes. That alone is enough to shift your perspective. And when your perspective changes, so does your posture. You no longer walk like someone who's trying to earn worth. You walk like someone who already has it. Destiny is not something you stumble into by accident. It's something you move toward intentionally. But to walk in it, your focus has to be aligned with your purpose. You have to stop allowing temporary situations to distract you from eternal truths. You have to stop letting fear blind you from opportunity. You have to start looking through the eyes of faith, believing that what's inside you is greater than what's against you. Your focus determines what you feed, and what you feed grows. When you feed your faith, your purpose begins to rise. When you feed your value, your confidence begins to strengthen. When you feed your vision, your destiny begins to take shape. So wherever you are right now, in your doubts, your pain, your waiting, or your wondering, know this: you are not lost, you are being led. You are not forgotten, you are being formed. The shifts you make today in your focus are not small, they are sacred, because the moment you stop looking at what you lack and start seeing what God placed within you, purpose begins to awaken. Destiny begins to rise, and the future you once feared becomes the calling you now embrace. You were never meant to stay stuck in fear, comparison, or doubt. You were born to walk in boldness, in faith, and in freedom. Keep shifting your focus. Keep trusting even when it doesn't make sense. Keep believing that your pain has purpose, and your story still matters. The best chapters of your life are not behind you. They're ahead of you. And every step you take in faith is a step closer to the life you were created to live. Thank you for your time, your heart, and your courage to keep going. Keep shining, keep moving, and never forget. You were made for more.